My name is James C. Offord. And the reason why I'm emphasizing the C, because up until recently, there were three James Offords. And the only difference was our middle names. So we all use our middle initial. I was born in New York, but that was only because my parents happened to be in New York when they had me. I was born in the Bellevue Hospital in New York in Harlem in 1927, so you can imagine how that was. But I don't claim New York because my parents just happened to be in New York when they had me, so I'm from Sandy Spring. And as we understand our history, we black people, we were brought to Sandy Spring by Quakers and freed. And some of us stopped, my family, stopped off in Sandy Spring, but they headed on to Canada. So, and this is very interesting. It's been about 20 years ago now, some of the Sandy Spring people got in contact with some of the people in Canada. And we had a reunion at the Ross Spotty Center in Sandy Spring. And it was amazing how we resembled each other. You could tell that we were relatives. That has been about 25, 30 years ago. But you could tell, it was so amazing that just how we had the family resemblance. So I'm proud of being a Sandy Spring resident. And so I don't let anybody forget that. I'm from Sandy Spring. And of course, doing segregation in the early years too, I didn't live in a house with indoor plumbing until I was 30 years old. Well, we were all poor, with discrimination and all that, we were all poor. But see, I left Sandy Spring in 1959, and I bought a house in Washington. And that was my first home, and the first home I lived in a house, or after I came from New York, with inside plumbing. So I lived in Washington, D.C. on Longfellow Street for 8 years. And then I decided that I was going to move up, you see. So I've never been satisfied where I am. Well, at my age, I am now. But I always felt there's another rung on the ladder. And anyway, so I was looking around for another house, to sell my house and move up. And it just happened that I saw a sign on a house in Washington, and I called the broker, and he said to me, he said, oh yeah, he said, but we've got some new houses out here in Montgomery County. I'm from Montgomery County, so I'm thinking, where are they? So he said, let me come down and get you and your wife and show you. Well, he did. And when he turned here on Randolph Road, I was totally shocked, because I remember when Randolph Road was a dirt road, and two cars couldn't pass. If two cars met, one of the cars had to pull off the road and pass each other. And when he turned on Randolph Road and it was all paved, I was totally shocked. And then when he turned down Appleby, he drove in here. I was just totally shocked. And coming out of racist society, I'm thinking, what's he bringing me here for? These are white people's houses. But anyway, he came in, the house next door was a model house. And anyway, so we sat down and talked, and he didn't know that I had a real estate license. So we sat down and talked, and I took a tour of that area, and my wife and I, we fell in love with this model house. This is called a Plantation Colonial. And we fell in love with this house, but they were all sold, except the foundation was here for this one. And as I told you, the sales office was right next door. So I got to talking to the broker, and he said, all we've got is that right there. It was nothing but the foundation here. I say, sell it to me. I bought this house with nothing but a foundation.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this was a racially mixed neighborhood, or?
No,
No.
this has always been a black neighborhood.
I misunderstood you.
Oh
But
no,
I
no, no. We,
so
we are all, but except for 2 or 3 houses, we all originals. We all moved in here about at ages between 35 and 40, and there's not too many of us left now. Originals. There's not too many of us left now, and all of us in our 80s and 90s. Yeah.
so you were telling me a little bit about when this neighborhood was first built and the builder. Um, why don't you start that story again?
Yeah. Well, the builder was very upset because he couldn't understand where blacks was getting enough money to buy these expensive houses. And they were selling for $40,000, 40, 45,000 depending. And he was very upset. And what was puzzling to me is, you getting paid, why are you upset? But I'm saying he was really frustrated. Was just talking loud and screaming. See, the reason why I know this, see, the house next door was a model house. And happened, I was selling real estate in Washington, D.C. And when I came out here and the broker found out that I was a real estate salesman in Washington, D.C., he just formed a partnership. He said, I tell you what, you sell the houses in Washington, D.C., and then I'll sell them out here. See, because they had to sell the houses in Washington, D.C. to buy out here. So we formed a partnership. And I sold the houses in Washington, D.C., and he sold the houses out here. Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you about growing up in Sandy Spring. Did you go to Rockville Colored High School? Or
Lincoln.
Lincoln. Okay.
Lincoln High School.
So
Yeah, it was the Rockville Colored High School, yeah.
but there was one called, the first one before Lincoln, I think, was called Rockville
Yeah,
Colored.
yeah, Rockville High, that was before my time.
Right. Okay. So tell me how you got to school.
Well, there was only one black high school in Montgomery County, and that was in the Lincoln Park area of Rockville. And the Lincoln Park area of Rockville was the black area across the railroad tracks. And in order to get to high school, we had to be bused, and we had to pay to be bused, because what the county did was they gave us old, worn out, broken down buses that the whites had thrown away. And they said, here are buses for you, now you get your own drivers. So we had to pay $1.50 a month for our drivers, you see. And the thing about it was, we were all, Sandy Spring, were in walking distance of Sherwood. I had a cousin who the only thing separated him from Sherwood was a fence. He could have gotten to Sherwood in 2 minutes, and he had to pay to ride 10 miles to Rockville to Lincoln High School. Yeah, and one of the little side joke was, it's not really a joke, it's true. There's a hill just beside a graveyard going to Rockville, and one of the buses was so broken down and worn out. When they got to that hill, when the bus got to that hill, all the kids had to get off the bus, and they drive the bus to the top of the hill, and then the kids walk up the hill and reload. So the bus wouldn't go up the hill with a load of children on it. So,
Funny.
yeah.
I mean, you're laughing about it now. It probably wasn't funny then.
Well, yeah, it wasn't funny then.
No.
But as like I said, I don't like to leave this out. My cousin, the only thing that separated him from Sherwood High School was a fence. He could get to school in 2 minutes. And he had to pay to be bused 10 miles away to Lincoln High School in Rockville.
So, did you experience, intolerance?
Oh, yeah. Well, the thing of it is, it was very disappointing that when a white person told you or said you can't come in, or if you want to buy something, you can come to the door, come to the end of the counter, and order whatever you want. Then you had to go out and go round back, and then they would stick our food out of the window, out of a back window, from that inside. You see, so that was humiliating. You see, but we had no choice. You see, and even there were some places that, well, I'll make the difference because to make the point in Prince George County, some places wouldn't even take an order from black people. So what we would do if we were working over there and usually working in the fields or whatever, what they would do, we had to do was send our supervisors in. It was always white to get our orders for us. They wouldn't even sell. They wouldn't even sell to us. We had to send the supervisors in, and they would go in and get our orders. And there were some stores, if they knew that supervisor was coming in to get something for us, they wouldn't even sell it to them. Yeah.
And so this was when you were in high school. This happened, or
Yeah. So right out of high
like,
school.
So, what do you think inspired you to try to work towards making things better?
Well, it couldn't get any worse. so what inspired me was that I felt that being an American citizen, I deserve the best that I could get. See, my philosophy is, and it is today, I'm going to always be the best me that I can be. I've never been a competitor. I've never felt jealous of somebody if they had a better car than me, or if they had a better home than me, or they wore better clothes. I was always be the best Jim Offord that I could be. And I feel that way right now, you see. And so I always felt that I wanted to get to the next rung on the step ladder. And I'm like that now. Well, not really, because at my age, where am I going now? But but I just feel, I always felt that I could do better. I've never been satisfied where I was. You see, and like, for instance, when I left Sandy Spring and moved to Washington, well, a lot of my friends and relatives, they predicted that I didn't know what I was doing. I was going to Washington, and I was going to starve to death, and I'd be back to Sandy Spring like a dog with his tail between his legs, half starved to death. Well, that was incentive too, because I had to prove that I could make it out of Sandy Spring. So that was an incentive. And so that's what I did. When I bought a house in Washington, D.C., and I've always been too, this is not always, but this is one of my philosophies. If you're the biggest fish in the pond is too small. See, I know some people who are that way. They got to be the biggest fish in the pond. It's either their show or no show. I've never been that way. I've always wanted to be the person that there's room for me to expand.
But I guess what I was also getting at was you also worked for fair housing, for your charge of minority contracting, working on civil rights. What do you think inspired you to do that?
I don't know. I think it was born in me, because I always felt that if I could help somebody, and there's a hymn titled that, and I have left word that I want that song sung at my funeral. If I could help somebody. Now, I don't know how I got that, but this was born in me, I guess. I don't know. I get a pleasure out of helping people, you see. And I'm drawn to the underdog. And if somebody needs help, I'm right there on the spot, right here. See, I help the people here, you see. In fact, my neighbor across the street, she got so she couldn't come out and get her paper about 3 years ago. I carried her paper to her door for about 3 years, see. And I got a pleasure out of it. And the same thing even now. If I go out, if it's bad weather, and I put my hat and coat and everything on, I go out and get my neighbor's papers too. I get my paper, and I take Pearl's paper across the street. I take Mary's paper over there, and I take my friend's paper. You know, I can just walk the circle, and I just feel, why should they have to get up and put all their clothes and walk out just to get the paper? I'm out here, right. And that's just the way I feel, and I get a pleasure out of being good to people. Yeah.
And doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I also understand that you played for the Sandy Springs Stars.
What?
Is it Sandy Springs Stars?
Oh yeah, the baseball team. Oh yeah, yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, you know, here again we had segregation, and we had some good ball players, but we couldn't move out of Sandlot. In fact, this where we are sitting right now was the Colesville baseball diamond. You see, and so we had our little black leagues, and we were good. And the reason why we were so superior is we used to play the white teams after season, and they weren't even contest for us. We could beat them, you know. But the reason wasn't that we were all that good. But the reason was the white guys who could play professional ball went to the professional, even the minor leagues. Well, we couldn't go anywhere, so we had professional caliber blacks that couldn't go anywhere, and had my uncle. In fact, he's James C. Offord, and I think I told you the reason why we use initials, 3 of us, and we always use our initials. Does difference. But my uncle, he just died about a couple of years ago. He was one of the best ball players around, but see, he never could go to the major leagues. But then we had some superior black players too, because we had a black league, you see. But he didn't want to leave home, so you might know the name Satchel Paige might be familiar to you, maybe so, and I can't remember a couple others. And up until Jackie Robinson, you see, we had superior players too, but we couldn't go out of the minor league. Not the minor. Well, we had black leagues, and they were good because they couldn't go any place else. Where the white players, they went on up to the majors. You see, so we locals were always superior to the white teams anyway, but we didn't play them except after the season. And then, you know, they'd get together. And like I just told you, I think I just told you, right here where we're sitting was Colesville baseball diamond. My father played baseball right here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And but the Sandlot leagues were different from the Black League, or is that the same thing?
Yeah. Well, the Sandlots, there were white Sandlots and black Sandlots too. We were all black Sandlots. You see, but we had such good players because we could go we could go out of the Sandlots, where the white players could go on up to the majors if they were good enough. You see, so the local teams, we were so superior to the local team because we had the best that couldn't go anywhere.
Which is too bad, but
yeah, it is. Yeah.
And baseball was pretty important, I think.
Oh yeah. Well, you see, we had during segregation. There was only 3 places that blacks could go. That was to church, that was to the beer joints, and to the baseball diamond. And a lot of the beer joints owned the baseball diamonds. So our Sunday was go to church, leave church, and you go to the ball game. And most of the baseball diamonds were owned by the beer joints. So you went to the beer joints and the baseball game, and that's the only place we had to go. See, we go to church and we go to the ball game or to the beer joints.
It's the way things were. Not that they were right, but that was the way things were. How did it feel? Were you resentful?
Well,
do you know what
it was that's the way it was, and what could I do about it? You see, and we just accepted it. Yeah, you see, it wasn't nothing you could do about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You still have family in Sandy Spring.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what did your family instill in you as you were growing up?
Well, it was my grandfather. He instilled religion. One thing, going to church on Sunday wasn't a choice. We were going to church. And then he instilled in us work hard. Because he used to say, lazy is the worst disease you could have. and he just made sure that we had a strong work habit. And have you ever been to the Sandy Springs Slave Museum? Well, that's the Offord farm right back at Slave Museum. Did you pay attention to it? That farm, the back of the Slave Museum?
Yes, I did notice it.
Yeah. Well, that's for Offord farm. That's where I grew up. And that's why my family is still there, you see. And it's called the Offord farm, you see. And so it's just still the way it is, the way it was, and it still is. But we're proud of it now. Or they are. I didn't get any of the land because I just left. I didn't stick around. But we all close. The family's all close. And then, do you remember, or did you know when there was a discussion about the road in Sandy Spring?
Well, I was gonna just ask you about that. I had heard that there was something about a farm road.
Yeah. Well, what the Park and Planning Commission declared that wasn't a road. And the people who owned property back there had no access. That's been, about a year ago, 2 years ago? But see, that wasn't true. Because that was the road for forever. I lived on that road. I was the witness. I lived on that road. I grew up on that road. And I knew all the people. I still do. Well, they're all gone now. But I knew everybody that lived back there. And we used to ride our sleds on that road. But the Park and Planning Commission came up and said that never was a road. And then I was upset about that. Because it's, here again, it gets back to, it makes us nothings, us black people. It makes us nothing. How did we live back there? And one of our historic farms back there, Offord. See, the Offords and the Orchids are all the same family. See, my family's name got changed from Orchid to Offord. You see, so, and I was disturbed about that because it just showed disrespect for us still now. And I was very upset about that. So I testified that that was the road because I grew up on that road. I lived right there.
And has it been resolved?
I don't know what happened.
Okay. Let's see. Just overall, I didn't know you were a real estate agent. You sold real estate, but then you started to ensure that people who needed places to live.
Yeah.
How did you make that transition? Or how did you make the transition from real estate to helping, like, the minority?
Well, I guess it was all the same, all in me somewhere at the same time. And there was a money incentive too. Because see, when discrimination was outlawed, the whites in D.C. started moving out. And see, the line of demarcation, it was an imaginary line, but that's what was Upshur Street in Northwest. All the blacks lived below Upshur Street. All the white people lived above Upshur Street. So when the government outlawed discrimination, the white people started moving out of D.C. and the black people started moving uptown. So I got a real estate license. So, and you know what? When I was selling real estate during the 60s, if a house stayed on the market over 2 weeks, something wrong with it. Okay. You see, because the whites are moving out and the blacks are moving up. So if a house didn't sell within a couple of weeks, was something wrong. So what we'd go in and say, now what's wrong with this house? And we'd put in put in some kind of what we call it. It was something to attract people to the house, change paint or something. So you go in and spend $200, then raise the price $2,000, and sell it,
Right.
and it would sell within a couple of weeks.
Right.
You see, yeah.
Right. So you've lived through a lot of changes.
Yes, I
here
have.
in Montgomery County.
Yes.
I mean, and DC too. When you reflect back, how does it make you feel to have gone from a segregated to integrated society?
It makes me feel good. It makes me feel that I have lived to see the changes, and I had a little bit to do with it. And so it makes me feel good. And some of my Jewish friends, I hope I don't want to get into something because if it wasn't for Jews, I would probably still be in the projects. You see, and some of my best friends are Jewish. And I give a lot of my success with the Jews. Yeah. Yeah, because it took me, when I was working, when they outlawed discrimination in public accommodation restaurants, I didn't go out and I didn't decide to go out and see if I could be served in an all-white restaurant. My Jewish co-workers made me do it. They offered us go in here. I said, look, they're not going to serve me. You come on here. That's how they used to tell me. Say, you come on here. And we would go in and sit down. And as soon as we sit down, you see all the waitresses would disappear. And we would sit there. And then finally, somebody would come out, usually a manager. And they were very bold about it. They told my Jewish friends, they said, we'll serve you all, but we don't serve him. And they were very bold about it. And my Jewish friends would say, well, if you can't serve him, you can't serve us. And then we'd get up and they would say, I hope your rent is short, just the amount of money that we would have spent here today at the end of the month. And we would get up and go someplace else, you see. So my Jewish friends made me integrate, because they would say, I want to go in, because I didn't feel like being embarrassed and turned down, you know. And they would say, come on here, Offord. And they'd make me integrate restaurants. And I'm very grateful for them for that, you see, because they just took me, made me feel better about myself. And I'm sure I had a little teeny bit to do with the integration that we have today, you see. And some of that was in me anyway, because see, I feel like, this may sound corny, but see, there's no such thing as a stranger. There's only friends you haven't met yet. And that's the way I feel about people. I'm a people person. And if you're in trouble, you come to me, I'll do what I can to help you. You see, because I guess I see it as a challenge or something, I don't know. But I don't see anybody hurt. And if anything I can do to help people, I'll do it. And in fact, right on the street, most of us now senior citizens. We're originals. And I look out for all of them, you know. And they asked, and the Civic Association, the Community Association asked me to come and talk about how to be a good neighbor. And I said, well, it doesn't take a long speech. I said, the pleasure is all mine. It's a pleasure when I go out and help the people. When I go out on bad weather, I go out and get my paper. I take my Pearl's paper across the street. I take Murray's paper over there. And I take Roger's paper over here. I just make the circle. Right. And so, because why should they happen to get up and get dressed and just come out to walk down and get their paper? I'm out there already dressed. And so that's what I do. Yeah. And as I said, the pleasure is all mine. I get a pleasure out of helping people. If there's anything that you need, if I can help you, I'm glad to do it.